everybody, my name is Elizabeth and welcome back to my channel. I am here in Cincinnati at the Immersive Titanic experience and I am looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to it for a while. I don't know everything that I'm going to be seeing here. I think there's going to be some artifacts and then also some recreations of parts of the Titanic, and then also learning some history and then about what happened about certain passengers. And they gave me this little keepsake that I'm going to show you, which is pretty cool. So let me flip around the camera and show you what I got. So this is basically, they told me it was my ticket to get onto the Titanic. So this is the one side. And then this side, it has the name and some general information about an actual passenger that was on the Titanic. And then near the end, I'll get to find out what happened to her, which I'm looking forward to and dreading at the same time. So yeah, let's continue on, see what all there is. All right. So to start with, they have this picture place for this with the front of the Titanic. Very cool. And then there, it looks like, I think this is going to be about the actual ship, but then they also have some stuff that's about the movie. So like this is authenticated by 20th Century Fox. It is an exact replica of the one featured in the movie Titanic. And so all this stuff up here is from the movie. Okay, so this is like a layout of the ship, and the little sign says that it was used in like marketing and stuff, which is pretty cool. So it's probably not showing it up, but it has like the labels of like where third class is and second class is, and pretty cool. All right, let me see if I can get this whole picture on the shot. It shows just kind of the scale of the ship, these men standing by the propellers. It's so big, it's huge. Just remembering that this ship is dwarfed by ones today, but at the time it was the biggest ship ever built. So this is pretty cool. It shows like the layout like we'd seen before, except it's in digital format. I apologize, the music is very loud in here. But then you can go through deck by deck and see a layout of each deck.
The story of Titanic begins thousands of years before she set sail. When floating snow filled the vast glaciers of Greenland.
Oh, that looks like one of the dining rooms. Okay, well, as you noticed, I put my hair up because it's the middle of June and it's very, very hot. So, all right, so I just got out of a room where there was like a recording talking more about the iceberg, and it was kind of talking about how like the Titanic, when the Titanic was being built, the iceberg was actually being formed at the same time, which was interesting. And then the iceberg started off as being like 2 miles wide or something like that. And then over the course of the years, obviously shrunk. But it talked about the moon affecting the currents and how there were more icebergs made that year, and just kind of fascinating stuff from the natural side of things, you know, what led to the iceberg that sunk the Titanic. And then behind me, so each section of this is kind of a different stage in the life of Titanic. So we saw the construction, then we saw kind of like the iceberg. And then now we're getting into actually getting on the ship. So behind me, they have like a reproduction of the side of the ship with a gangway, and they have like a bunch of luggage and stuff stacked up. I'll show you a better angle of it. But I think from here on, we'll be inside the ship and taking a look at what it was like inside. One thing it did say about the passengers was that some of the first class passengers, their bank accounts were greater than the treasury of some countries, which I'm sure is true today with some people, and that just that boggles my mind. So anyway, let's continue on. Okay, so here is kind of the facade that they set up that looks like the side of the ship and the gangway, which I feel is probably more like for third class customers. And then, as I mentioned, they have some fakey luggage here with some mail bags, all that kind of stuff. And then it kind of looks like they're going over water, and they have mirrors there. It's to make the ship look bigger, but it's pretty cool. All right, let's go inside. Okay, so they provided this partial grocery list of all of the stuff that they set sail with for provisions for all of the passengers and crew. It's 40 tons of potatoes. That's a lot of potatoes. So they have this set up to look like the dining room. So they posted a log of like distance traveled and other relevant information. I'm not sure. Okay, so that was a first class setting. This is second class. Still pretty nice. I'd ride second class. I mean, they had a caviar dish, so. And then up here we have third class. Oh wait, I guess it's all mixed in. So we're back to first class again. Yeah, it's definitely all mixed in because there's first class stuff over here, then there's a second class fish knife, and then more first class stuff over there. I wish they would have had like one table set up like a first class and then another set up like what second class would have been like, and then and then third class. Okay, so we're talking about the first class dining room here. And it says mealtimes were set for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and signaled by the ship's bugler playing the roast beef of Old England. Apparently, that's a song. So that song, whatever that is, would be played prior to each seating. That's hilarious. I want to hear the song, The Roast Beef of Old England. Another one of the really cool recreations. So I'm not sure how much it's coming across, but only the bottom 3 steps are actual steps. The rest is just a lit picture. But it's pretty cool. And this statue. Okay, I think I found some authentic stuff. So this is a postcard that's made of woven silk, and it said this postcard was purchased in the barbershop on board the Titanic. And I wonder, because one of the things I was reading was said that the Titanic made a couple stops before it actually set out across the ocean. It left England and then made 2 or 3 stops, and people got off at those stops. First of all, can you imagine what it would be like to be one of those people who got off and then heard what happened to the Titanic after you got off? What would that feel like? But second, I wonder if that's where these came from. That, and this envelope was purchased in the Titanic's barbershop.
As I grew up, I
I'd look up at this incredible ship taking shape around me. I knew every inch of her like the back of my hand, and there was no way I would let her sail away without me. I quit my job at the shipyard and signed on as a fireman, just so I could stay on board Titanic forever. I'll never forget the day we left Southampton. The docks were buzzing with the most beautiful chaos you've ever seen. Passengers of the upper classes were enjoying Titanic's luxury facilities on board. The view over the ocean from the boat deck of the Titanic was impressive, especially since most of the lifeboats were removed to clear the exterior areas for the first-class passengers.
Wise, very wise.
I looked for her everywhere on board. Since I knew the ship in and out, I even managed to sneak out to the upper decks, hoping to see her there. Honestly, I tell you, nothing in my life had ever hit me like this before. I felt like she had taken hold of my soul.
I don't know what's happening right now. The ship just disappeared and these two are dancing. It didn't sink, it just vanished.
First officer told us to look out for icebergs and growlers. I mean, no wind, no moon, going at full speed. Look at that. God, freezing up here. What's that? There. Oh my God, iceberg! Get the bell! Come on, pick up, pick up. Yes, what do you see? Iceberg, right ahead. doing down there? They're cutting it close. Turn. Hold on, Reg. Brace yourself.
She left me there and disappeared into the depths of the ocean. Who was she? A product of my imagination? The spirit of the Titanic? Or something more mysterious? I'll never know. What I do know is that she saved my life before vanishing into the depths of the ocean together with the Titanic.
Almost everyone in the water died within 15 to 45 minutes because of the cold and cardiac arrest.
I was one of the very few pulled from the freezing water onto a lifeboat.
The water was coming in. Oh, these are movie posters. That's cool. Okay, well, I hope you can hear me okay here. The music tends to be kind of loud, and I don't want to talk too loud because I don't want to disturb other people who are here. But what you just saw was this like 15, 20, maybe even longer, it's hard to say, kind of recreation of like a replay of the life of the Titanic. So it showed it being built, you know, obviously QuickTime, like it showed like an ad for the Titanic, you know, talking about how it's fastest and encouraging people to come sail on it. And then of course it showed a little bit of the life on the ship, and then up until the sinking and the rescue and the aftermath and things like that. And it was pretty cool. Like it wasn't, obviously it was clear, it was like very animated, you know, it wasn't like lifelike or anything like that, but it was effective, I think, minus the fake love story that they added in. Which I feel like they added it because they were like, well, everybody knows the movie Titanic, and so they want to see, you know, something like Jack and Rose, you know, but the girl was like some mythological creature or something, because she like saved him from, like, she let him out of the Titanic when he was like underwater, and he like swam and followed her and out of the Titanic. It was ridiculous. Like it was like she was supposed to be like a siren or a mermaid or something like that, and it was unnecessary. But the rest of it, the actual historical part of it, and seeing kind of the recreation of the historical part, was pretty impressive and pretty moving. You know, a lot of people died that day. One thing that I was actually, I think I was talking to my mom about it when we were on our Alaska cruise. We were talking about, you know, like safety standards and how it all changed after the Titanic. And, you know, we were talking about the tragedy, you know, what a tragedy a Titanic was. And I thought, you know, even if things had gone differently for the Titanic and they didn't hit the iceberg and they made it safely, it was going to take a giant, horrible thing happening like this for the standards to change, you know, and for there to be more regulations as far as lifeboats and life jackets and things like that. So as sad as the Titanic was, and as wonderful as it would be if all those people had lived and made it to, you know, New York safely, if the laws didn't change then, another ship would have had some, you know, terrible accident, and a lot of people would have died somewhere else, and that's what would change the laws. So it's one of those kind of conundrums that happens in life sometimes. But well, we still have a lot of museum left. That was kind of, I think, only like halfway through, because we still have a lot of stuff left to see. So I'm hoping that they have some kind of artifacts, like authentic artifacts. So let's see what they have. Okay, so here, this picture, it's a memorial photo card. It was made to support fundraising efforts for the families of Titanic victims. It doesn't say that it was made by the White Star Line or anything. It looks more that it was made. It was made with a special purpose by Thomas Whittle, who worked in Harland and Wolff's metal shops. Yeah, so it looks like it was just someone who had worked on building the ship that took it upon himself to start selling these to help families. And then it says a remembrance napkin. And so these people would have these to like just kind of remember what happened, because people felt very connected to it at the time when it happened. And then here is a French memorial hymn. It's printed in France to honor the Titanic's dead. The cover bears the image of a decorative palm frond. I would love to hear that. Oh, so this is recovered sheet music. It's called Ghost Dance. That's very telling. It says Titanic's orchestra leader, Wallace Hartley, famously played during the boarding of the lifeboats and as the ship was sinking. His body was recovered with his violin and his music box still strapped to his chest. I don't think this is the actual violin, it just says violin. But the music, it doesn't say that this music was in his bag, but it does say that it was recovered. So maybe. Okay, let's see if I can get this whole thing in. So this is sort of a chart that shows like people that came from different cities and different countries, and then like what class they were on board. I am just fascinated and amazed by the variety of countries, you know, like back then, you know, it wasn't easy to travel. And the fact that there are people that were on the Titanic from Argentina, Australia, Bosnia, you know, Cuba, India, Japan, all over, like, that is not what I expected. Now, granted, that big chunk is people from England. The next big chunk is people from the USA, and then Ireland and Sweden. So that is not as surprising, but the fact that there are people, you know, from so far away that had to travel so far just to get on the Titanic is really astonishing. Okay, and then this is sort of a layout of what the wreck site looks like. So at the very top there is the bow section, and then almost 2,000 feet away is the stern, and then debris scattered all over. So it's talking about how relief funds, specifically with the American Red Cross, but also with Titanic relief funds, were established in the UK and the US to raise money for the families of the victims. And it's said that the American Red Cross interviewed nearly every third class and many second class survivors to determine what types of assistance they needed beyond the immediate temporary assistance established in New York. Because a lot of times, you know, the people that went down with the Titanic were the husbands and the brothers and the people who were the main, you know, money earners for the family. And so it talks about people trying to step up and kind of fill that void and make sure that they had enough. Unfortunately, it does say that the same cannot be said for the widows of the Titanic's crew, and it was very difficult for them to stay out of poverty. So that is very unfortunate. That, I don't know, you would think that like White Star Line or one of the other companies involved would step up and take care of the widows and orphans that were left behind by their mistakes, but I guess not. One last graph here. So this is showing all the lifeboats and how full they were, and it said the Titanic carried 20 lifeboats. Many of them were not filled to their capacity, and so you see 1 and 2 that only had 12 people in them. Some of them, like this one, had 70. And so the discrepancy in that, like, if those had filled to 70, how many, you know, that many more people would have been saved. One over here only has 17. Yeah, 2 with 28 up there. Now, it did say that some of the lifeboats that left that weren't quite as full is because that people weren't around them. Like, they didn't know to go up to that deck or something, and so there was just nobody else standing there to put in the boat. So they were like, well, let's just put it in the water. And what'd you get? But at the same time, it's like nobody could, like, run down to the next deck and, you know, call up a couple people. Yeah, but it's just, yeah, it's unfortunate. And here we have, this is like a 4-walled glass structure that shows everybody who is on board. So you have the crew, and saved 213, lost 698. So we're gonna walk around and we're gonna find the passenger that I am. Let's see. So here we have first class passengers. Saved 201, lost 123. Okay, second class passengers. Saved 111, lost 173. And I'll come back here in a minute and find my lady and see if she survived or not. But here, last, we have third class passengers. Saved 172, lost 537. Okay, and I found her. Oh, it is not going to focus on that. Her name is Mrs. Matilda Wise, and she survived. So, yeah, at least there was no sad ending for my person. Of course, she had a husband. I don't know. There is a Mr. Leopold Wise on the lost list. Was that her husband? That's unfortunate. Well, I am back from the Titanic experience. I really, really enjoyed it. There weren't as many authentic, maybe, articles as I expected, but it was still really informative and really well done. That room, that was a 360 experience all the way around, and you saw the, Titanic life cycles, essentially. That was really enjoyable. I know I already talked about it. Even with that hokey love story, that was probably the highlight of the whole thing, just because it was so immersive. And you could probably tell from the video that there was some of the seating was made to look like lifeboats. I'm still healing from my broken leg, so there's no way I was going to be able to climb into one of those lifeboats, so I just sat on a bench and watched. I did end up watching it through twice, and that's why the angle changes at one point. I was sitting up on the elevated, and then I was sitting kind of in a corner for the rest of it, because it had I probably showed some in the footage that they would have these facts that would pop up on the screens, but they went very quickly. So it was very hard to read them while they were up there. And so I wanted to stay and see it again and see if I could read more of the facts. And so that's kind of why I watched it through twice. One thing I didn't do, and I didn't do it because of my leg, was they had a virtual reality area where you could put on the virtual reality headset and kind of experience different things. I did ask, one of my friends did it because I was nervous with my leg. I was like, I shouldn't be walking around with a still broken leg, where I can't see where I'm going. So I was just too nervous to do it, even though they kind of stand right with you to make sure you don't run into stuff. I was a little nervous to do it, but a friend has done it. And she said, you got to kind of go through and see the Titanic and kind of the way it was, the when it was all beautiful, and then see the sinking of it, all kind of more sped up, I think, than what we saw in the room. So she said it was cool, but yeah, I didn't do it myself. It is a temporary show here in Cincinnati. I'm not sure when it started, but it's only going to be here through September. I was talking to the man behind the desk who scanned my ticket, and he said that this location, what is it called? Experience Hub? I don't remember what the building was called, the business that runs it, but the building always has some kind of interactive museum piece, I guess, for lack of a better word. But it changes, it rotates, they'll have something there for, 4 months, 6 months, something like that. And then that it will move on to another city and they'll get a different experience in. This is the first time I've ever been here, but I'm interested to see what they get next, because it was a lot of fun and it was very informative and pretty well done. At first, I was a little disappointed that they didn't have more authentic items from the Titanic. But then I started thinking, I know there's a lot of controversy maybe is not, maybe that's too strong of a word, but around whether or not, we should salvage from the Titanic, because it's, it's a very solemn thing and it's essentially a graveyard. And so once I started thinking about that, I was like, okay, maybe it's okay that there weren't any rivets that they get brought up from the ocean floor, or things like that. I know you can see those at other museums, but I thought, maybe it's okay that they don't have a lot of them to go around and, not scavenge from that shipwreck. So it was, the stuff that we did see was interesting, just from the time, the different things that they had, like that they created in memory of the Titanic, like that hymn and the photo that they would sell to raise money for the families, things like that. All that was very cool. That sheet music that was recovered from the Titanic, all very cool. And it's always a very solemn thing. I saw a different exhibit at the Cincinnati Museum. It was an exhibit on Pompeii. That probably moved me even more than the Titanic one, just because they had so many artifacts from before. You could learn about what life was like in the city, and it was really, really interesting. And then they had this room, much smaller than the Titanic room that I saw today, but you kind of stood there and watched a screen that showed the volcano erupting and the stages that it went through. And it was kind of interactive, where like the floor shook a little bit and you kind of like had a little bit of immersion as far as a little bit of what it might be like. And then after that room, they had the casts of the bodies that they found at Pompeii. They didn't actually find bodies, but it was like crevices where you could, it was like perfectly preserved, and so there were casts of those, and that was very moving and a very solemn thing. And it was similar with the Titanic exhibit that I saw today. It was very interesting to learn about the building of the ship and, how much detail they put into it and how luxurious it was. One thing, I don't remember if I said this in an earlier clip, but they said that the second class rooms on the Titanic were as nice as some of the first class rooms on some of the other cruise ships of the time. And so even the third class rooms, which, we all hear about, like, oh, the third class was terrible and all this kind of stuff, but everything on Titanic was elevated from what it had been. And to see that and to see, what they had built it to be and what kind of an incredible feat it was, but also made by people who maybe thought a little too much of what they had done and didn't actually take into consideration what might happen. So it was great to see like the progress, and then to have such an immersive experience with that surround theater, was just, it was wonderful. If you guys ever see the Titanic experience come to your city, I totally recommend it. If you're watching me right now and you're anywhere near Cincinnati, Ohio, I think it's worth going to see. I think it was just, it was worth it. And then of course after that to see, those names, the lists that I showed, how many people were on the ship and how many people survived versus how many died. And, it's always very, it's a very solemn thing, just to look at that and realize the reality of it, and how many people lost their lives and how many people lost loved ones in just, a couple hours. I guess, if there's one good thing to be said, it's that regulations were put in place to hope, to try to avoid tragedies like that, which were avoidable. They just didn't have enough lifeboats. If they would have had lifeboats, it would have been different, so. Well, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm so excited that I'm getting back up and around and able to do things again after my injury. So if you did enjoy it, go ahead and give it a like and a subscribe, and follow me over on Instagram at Lead the Life Vlog, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.